Kim Ji-hoon is 28 years old, an age where life hangs between what was promised and what actually exists. His apartment is small, neat, practical, a place chosen not for comfort, but for survival. One desk, one laptop, one kettle that boils every morning before work. Outside, Seoul moves fast, loud, efficient. Inside, everything is quiet. Kim has been a software developer for 6 years. Long hours, relentless deadlines, projects that never truly end, only get replaced. He is good at what he does, but good is never enough in a city that never slows down. Every month follows the same calculation: rent, utilities, food, savings, if anything remains. At night, he scrolls through job listings, not because he dreams of wealth, but because stability now feels like a luxury. His parents live outside the city. They never complain. They never ask for money. Somehow, that makes the pressure heavier. Kim wants to be the one who says, "Everything is fine now. You do not have to worry anymore." Sometimes, he imagines a different future, a larger apartment, a window with more light, a meal where he pays without thinking. These thoughts arrive quietly, usually late at night, when the city noise fades and doubt becomes louder. There is nothing remarkable about Kim. No scandal, no ambition to change the world. Just a man trying to move one step forward without slipping back. And that is what makes this story dangerous. Because Kim is not reckless, not careless. He does everything right. And for a long time, that feels like it should be enough. When the number appears on the screen, Kim forces himself to stay calm. $180,000 a year, remote work, a technology startup based in the United States. These words are not just career terms. They feel like a door opening inside his mind. No need to leave Seoul, no need to trade family for opportunity. The same room, the same desk, yet suddenly everything carries a different meaning. With that salary, for the first time, Kim does not have to decide what expense to cut this month. He thinks about sending money to his parents without apologizing for how little it is. He thinks about a bigger apartment, not immediately, but something within reach. Remote work is not just working from home. To Kim, it is freedom. Freedom from packed subway cars every morning. Freedom from the feeling of always being late in a race that never ends. An American startup carries something else as well. The belief that his effort might actually be seen, that he is more than a name in a spreadsheet. In his mind, the future begins to take shape through ordinary details. A weekend dinner call with his parents, his voice lighter. A short trip without calculating every cost. A life no longer built around the word if. He does not think about luxury, only peace of mind. It is a simple dream, but for Kim, it is enough to make his heart beat faster. And in that moment, he believes he has touched it. Kim follows the request as he has many times before. He lowers his eyes to the screen, moves the cursor with familiar ease. Download the file. A small action, almost unconscious. No red warning, no security alert, no strange sound. Everything is quiet, reassuringly quiet. The call continues. The voice on the other side remains steady, friendly. Kim nods, answers questions, explains his thinking like someone moving along the correct path. He does not realize that this very normality is the most dangerous thing of all. There is no jolt of fear, no signal to doubt, just a few seconds passing in silence. But sometimes, the biggest events do not begin with noise. They begin with the absence of anything suspicious. Kim looks at the screen. Everything appears intact. The laptop runs normally. The file opens. The interview goes on. He thinks he is moving closer to the future he imagined. Meanwhile, somewhere he cannot see or feel, something invisible has just happened. Not destruction, not a loud intrusion, just a door opening quietly, small enough to escape notice, but large enough that it cannot be closed again. Kim feels no fear. He even feels relief. And that moment of calm becomes the starting point of consequences far beyond anything he could have imagined. Kim never knows what truly happened after that click. But the interview he took part in was never an opportunity. It was never a startup, never Silicon Valley. There was no office, no investors, no dream on the other side of the screen. The polite faces, professional voices, and clean logo were just a carefully built shell. Behind it were not people searching for talent, but individuals who never appear on LinkedIn, who never need personal credibility. They do not recruit, they hunt. What Kim touched was not a technical test, but a link in a chain of operations repeated for years. The group behind it is known as Lazarus Group. Not a small gang, not spontaneous criminals. These are hackers who operate like a military unit, trained, organized, and protected by a state. They do not work for personal profit or underground fame. Money is only a tool. What they serve is the interest of an isolated country, where technology becomes the only path to survival. Lazarus does not attack loudly. They do not leave marks for display. They exist like a shadow, patient, cold, invisible. What makes them terrifying is not their code, but their understanding of people. They know who will trust. They know who needs an opportunity. They know that an ordinary dream can be the easiest door to open. Kim is just one name among thousands, chosen not because he is special, but because he is ordinary. And that ordinariness makes him the starting point of a story he will never fully see. A story where the people behind it do not steal for personal gain, but for the ambition of a nation. To understand why Lazarus exists, you have to look somewhere very different, both geographically and in rhythm. North Korea is not like the rest of the world. Decades of sanctions and isolation, no free trade, no international cash flow, no legal path into the global economy. For many countries, that is a crisis. For North Korea, it is a survival problem. When they cannot earn money like others, they are forced to find another way. They choose cyberspace. In the shadows of the military system, a unit is formed, Bureau 121. On paper, it does not exist. No address, no sign, no public budget. In reality, it is one of the most dangerous cyber forces on the planet. Children are selected very early, sometimes as young as 10. They are not asked if they want this life. They are taught mathematics, logic, programming, foreign languages, under military discipline and the pressure of war. Their childhood has no playgrounds, no choices, only assignments, screens, and orders. When they grow up, they do not become entrepreneurs. They do not work for technology companies. They do not dream of another life. They become soldiers. But instead of rifles, they carry keyboards. Cyber warfare for North Korea is not an academic concept. It is national strategy. Each operation is not meant to make noise, but to bring money home. Money for fuel, for technology, for programs the outside world never fully sees. In this system, Lazarus is not a rogue group. They are a tool, protected, tolerated, and allowed to do what ordinary individuals would pay for with their lives. What makes this story cold is not only politics, but the people inside it. These hackers were not born criminals. They were trained to serve, like any other soldiers, just on a different battlefield. And seen this way, Lazarus attacks are no longer random thefts. They are part of a silent war where the boundaries between economy, technology, and military power have completely dissolved. Lazarus did not appear from nowhere. Before their name shook global finance, they left marks in the very specific places. In 2014, Sony Pictures was attacked. Not a small company, not outdated systems. Sony is a global entertainment giant with top-tier security. Yet in a short time, internal emails were leaked, employee data exposed, unreleased films distributed. Hundreds of employees stayed awake at night, not because of deadlines, but fear. Fear that their private lives had been exposed to the world. The reason sounded small, a comedy film, a satirical script mocking North Korean leadership, but the response was anything but small. Lazarus sent a clear message. They could enter any company, in any country, and do what they wanted. The world laughed. Intelligence agencies did not. 2 years later, they targeted another institution, the Central Bank of Bangladesh, not for embarrassment, this time for money. $1 billion was requested from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Everything was prepared carefully, valid accounts, correct procedures. One tiny detail was missing, a spelling mistake. A single misspelled word in a transfer order made a bank employee pause. That moment of doubt saved most of the money. But $81 million still disappeared. For many countries, that is a full year budget. For Lazarus, it was a lesson. Not a lesson in failure, but in limits. They learned the global financial system could be deceived. They learned humans were still the weak point. And they learned that with small adjustments, the next time, there would be no mistake. These attacks were not random. They were rehearsals, each one harder, each one larger. Sony showed them the power of intrusion. Bangladesh showed them how money moves. Small errors did not slow them down. They made them more dangerous. Because this was not luck. not recklessness. It was training over many years, where every failure was studied, dissected, improved. And looking back, one thing becomes clear. What Kim Ji-hoon touched was not a new plot. It was the result of a long, patient, cold process of refinement. After these lessons, Lazarus changed their approach. They realized breaking systems was no longer the most effective path. Technical walls grew thicker, encryption grew stronger, but there was one thing software could never patch: people. From then on, Lazarus hacked humans before hacking machines. Not with force, but with trust. A contextual email, a timely invitation, a process that looked perfectly legitimate. They studied how organizations work, how employees make decisions, how trust is built inside large systems. They did not break procedures, they followed them, step by step, so precisely that nothing looked wrong. That is what made it dangerous, because when procedures are followed correctly, no one feels the need to doubt. Lazarus understood this deeply. They did not need passwords. They did not need to break encryption. What they needed was agreement, a nod, a confirmation, a digital signature placed in the right spot. Their software did not steal credentials. It did something far more subtle. It changed how reality appeared to the human eye. The screen showed the correct address. The numbers looked reasonable. All checks passed. But beneath the familiar interface, the essence of the transaction was distorted, not by violence, but by quiet persuasion. This was no longer hacking in the old sense. This was trust manipulation at a system level. When people believe they are doing the right thing, they open the door themselves. And that is exactly what Lazarus wanted. They did not need to hide. They stood inside everyday workflows, wearing the shape of perfect compliance. When the moment came, no one was forced. No one was tricked in the usual sense. People simply did their jobs. That normality prepared the ground for the next target, a place where trust is everything, where every correct action is assumed safe, where one moment of absolute confidence can ripple across the world. Bybit was ahead, and Lazarus was ready. Bybit was built like a fortress, not the kind of security designed for show, but a system created by people who understood exactly what they were protecting. Billions of dollars belonging to others, the trust of millions. Most funds were not online. They were stored in cold wallets, nearly isolated from the internet. No one could touch them with a remote click. Moving funds required layers of checks, multiple people, different roles. That was the core philosophy. No single individual had absolute power. Multi-signature was not just technology, it was trust divided. A major transaction required multiple eyes, multiple confirmations, multiple agreements. Each person was a barrier, each signature a silent question. Procedures were written, rehearsed, reviewed, from rare edge cases to routine daily actions. Employees were trained to question anomalies, but also to trust the system when everything was correct. And most of the time, it worked flawlessly. Thousands of transactions every day. Funds moved to the right place, at the right time, with the right approvals. No chaos, no mistakes. That stability created deep safety. The belief that if everyone did their job correctly, nothing could collapse. There was no negligence here, no careless staff, no obvious hole. Only people doing serious work inside a system they trusted. That is what made the fortress strong, and also what made it vulnerable in a different way. Because when every step is correct, doubt becomes unnecessary. Bybit did not fail due to weak security. It was built on the assumption that humans would act correctly. And on that decisive day, the assumption held true. Everyone did everything right. And that is why the collapse would hurt more than any mistake. Ben Zhou was not an unfamiliar name inside Bybit. He was the leader, the person who watched the company grow from the beginning, the one who helped design the security processes everyone trusted. When the notification appeared, it was not an emergency, just a routine internal transfer, moving funds from cold storage to hot wallets for daily operations. Ben sat before the screen, blue light reflecting off a tired face after long hours. He read every line, checked the address, correct, checked the amount, reasonable, checked the smart contract, nothing unusual. Everything matched what he had seen hundreds of times before. There was no pressure, no urgency, only responsibility. Ben knew his signature was not a technical step. It was a commitment that the system was still safe. He took a breath, reminding himself that this was exactly how the system was meant to work. When all steps were correct, when multiple people had independently verified, The only decision left was trust. Ben approved the transaction. No warning, no anomaly. The transfer confirmed like any other. And that ordinary moment became the point of no return. Because what Ben saw was correct, but what actually happened underneath was not. Everything was accurate, and because of that, everything was completely wrong. No one noticed immediately. No alarm, no red screen, just numbers shifting inside the system. But within 2 hours, the truth revealed itself coldly. $1.5 billion did not vanish in one move. It was torn apart, split into 50 different wallets, each carrying a fragment of the massive sum. On the blockchain, everything was public, visible, undeniable. Transaction lines appeared in rapid succession, like a map drawing its own escape route. Each refresh placed the money somewhere else. No pause, no undo. For those watching, it felt like standing before a massive landslide unfolding slowly, layer by layer, with nothing to do but count each collapse. $1.5 billion stopped being a number. It became a living thing, splitting, spreading, blending into thousands of legitimate transactions worldwide. The blockchain does not judge right or wrong. It records truth. And the truth now was that the money no longer belonged to Bybit. Each new wallet was a door closing behind it. Each minute widened a gap that could not be closed. Those involved realized something worse than theft. They were watching it happen in real time, seeing every step, every branch, completely powerless. 2 hours passed like a prolonged trance. As the sun rose, the money was scattered across the blockchain, and what remained was emptiness. No questions, no timely hope. Only the realization that some things, once in motion, cannot be stopped by human hands. The first person to notice was not an executive. It was a security analyst, working through what seemed like an ordinary morning. He looked at the cold wallet balance and slowed down. The number did not match, not a small discrepancy, a void too large to explain as a system error. He refreshed the screen, checked the transaction logs. Everything had signatures, everything followed procedure. That is what made his chest tighten. He called his supervisor. More people entered the room. For several seconds, no one spoke. They stared at the same screen, the same number, the same truth taking shape. The feeling was not panic. It was thick silence, where blood seemed to freeze. Everyone understood what they were seeing, and everyone knew there was no way back. No shouting, no blame, because deep down, they all knew everything had followed procedure. But correct no longer meant safe. One person thought about an email ignored the night before. Another wondered if one more check might have helped. Those questions arrived too late. The blockchain does not wait for regret. In that moment, the money stopped being money. It became weight pressing on every person in the room. The weight of responsibility, of broken trust, of the knowledge that they were inside a story that would be remembered for years. And the most painful part was not the loss, but realizing that the moment to stop it had passed unnoticed. The race began immediately. No time to absorb shock. No pause to grieve. New screens opened. Blockchain maps filled with tangled lines, lighting up and fading constantly. Each transaction was a trace. Each wallet a point of light that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Analysts worked in parallel, tracking every data line, trying to predict the next move. The blockchain does not lie, but it does not help. It only records everything, cold and absolute. A small portion of funds was stopped at major exchanges. Emergency freeze requests were sent. A few transactions halted. Not many, just a tiny fraction of the original amount. But even that brought a fragile hope that something could be saved, that the race was not completely lost. Meanwhile, on the other side, laundering accelerated. Funds were swapped, split, bridged across chains, mixed into thousands of legitimate transactions. Every step calculated to buy time, blur trails, move beyond reach. One name began appearing repeatedly in reports: EXH Exchange, a little-known platform operating in gray zones, where identity is not asked and questions are discouraged. There, the money kept flowing. Fees collected steadily. No emotion, no responsibility. For those watching, it felt like chasing a flood, knowing every minute increased the distance. Hope remained, but so thin that one more transaction, one more turn, could erase it entirely. At this point, the story was no longer about stolen numbers or a damaged company. As investigators connected data, a larger picture emerged, colder and harder to accept. Most of the money did not disappear into personal luxury. It flowed into programs the outside world only hears about in brief headlines. Missiles, warheads, nuclear tests conducted in silence. Estimates suggest nearly half of North Korea's foreign currency comes from cyber operations. Not exports, not trade, but invisible attacks like this. Seen through that lens, cybercrime feels too small a term. This is no longer cybercrime. It is a financial artery feeding military power. Every successful transaction is not just theft, but a step in global threat escalation. What unsettles many is not only politics, but the distance between action and consequence. One click in a small Seoul apartment, one approval in a climate-controlled office. And somewhere far away, life-altering decisions accelerate. No one here thought they were participating in geopolitics. But money does not care about intent. It moves. And when it arrives at the right destination, consequences become real. Security experts call this financial terrorism, a form of warfare without bombs, without visible troops, only technology, patience, and exploited trust. And once that line is crossed, the world must face an uncomfortable truth. In this era, war can begin without a single shot fired. Kim Ji-hyun was not arrested. He was confirmed as a victim. On paper, his life continues. But some things never return to normal. Every time he opens his laptop, every time he downloads a new file, he pauses, if only for a moment. Not from obvious fear, but because the memory of that harmless moment still lingers. One click tied his life to an event beyond any personal scale. Elsewhere, the CEO of Bybit continues appearing in public, answering questions, reassuring customers, holding the company together. But late at night, when the office lights are off, he remembers the screen that day, the lines he read, the checks he completed. No step skipped, no rule broken. And that is the heaviest burden. Because no one in this story truly made a mistake. The system did not fail from negligence. People did not fail from ignorance. Everything worked exactly as designed. Meanwhile, out there, variants of the malware still exist, modified, improved, waiting on other computers in other cities. Quiet, unhurried, patient. This story has no clean ending, no moment where justice is fully restored. Only a quiet truth remains. That in the modern world, the most dangerous moments are not obvious failures. They are the moments when everything is correct. Nobody made a mistake, and because of that, no one knows where to begin fixing it.